Hi, I'd like to talk about scat singing and just some ideas that can help you get started. This is at least the way I do it. I look at it as two different things. One thing is your ideas. Where do you get the actual ideas? Where do you get the musical ideas? The phrasing, the articulation, all of that. And then the second thing that's unique to scat singing is where do you get your syllables? Because you need to have syllables, otherwise you can't articulate the stuff. And there's all these theories about syllables, like you use the consonants that have T's, B's, bop, anything that's hard, and it'll give you an attack. That's all good, but like Hal Galper said in one of his clinics, Hal Galper, great piano player, and he did a great clinic on it, it's up on YouTube, where he talks about there's a whole generation that is learning jazz based on the theory side of it, as opposed to another generation that learned jazz based on how it sounded. And when you learn based on how things actually sound, then you wind up many times doing the theory correctly. So it's kind of important, and we'll touch on that in a minute. But when we look at where do you get the ideas, let's say you're starting out and you want to get started, and if you're not careful, you don't want to do this. Waka 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 hana wawi waka wawi waka waki woo. If you're not sure what to do, you will just make noise with your voice because you think, or you might think, that scat singing is done with your voice. So anything you do with your voice is valid. That's not true. The way I look at it is you use your voice to sound like a jazz instrumentalist. So in order to get the right phrasing in, what we have to do is listen to a jazz instrumentalist. And what is a good idea for vocalists is if, in the very beginning, is if you listen to big band, like put on a big band, like a Count Basie big band recording, and memorize it, because that has a lot of good figures in it. Ella Fitzgerald has a lot of that kind of thing in her scatting. Or trumpet players. And the reason why trumpet players are good to listen to is because just the nature of the trumpet is a little more linear. If you listen to a saxophone player, you can have something that goes an octave in the sixth. And that's a little tricky to scat. But trumpet, because of the way it's built, they tend to be a little more linear. And I will list some trumpet players underneath that would be good for you to start with. But right now I'll tell you, like Kenny Durham, Clifford Brown, Clark Terry, Miles Davis, the kind of blue era, Blue Mitchell. These are all great people to just Google or YouTube, and it's a little bit easier for you to copy a trumpet, just because it's not so rangy. And I just had better luck with that when I teach students. So Miles Davis, kind of blue. If you had to scat on So What and you learn Miles solo, be ba doo doo ba doo be doo be doo. That's a famous solo. Any jazz player knows it. That's where you can get ideas. That's where you can get the idea on how to phrase, how to create a line. The other thing you need to do is you need to copy an actual scat singer to get syllables. Everybody does it differently. If you listen to Ella Fitzgerald, she'll... It's a little too loud. Ella does a lot of doobie-doo, da-ba-ba-ba-doo, right up front. It's like kind of up front. If you listen to Clark Terry, he did this thing called Mumbling. And it's, and you would never come up with that if you didn't hear it. So you could listen to Clark Terry. If you listen to someone like John Hendricks, he's like, he would sort of bebop it that way. Someone like James Moody would have, well, Moody can do just about anything, but he would have something that would go. So if you listen to Moody, you'll hear all these jumps, and you get different syllables. So you need to get the idea, and trumpet players are a great place to start. And you need to get their syllables together, because without syllables, you can't form any of this. And you don't need to know every scat singer and every solo, but I've taught some students where I give them an Ella Fitzgerald solo on How High the Moon, which is a famous solo, or one-note samba, up Latin kind of happy thing. And I had a student for 1 year, she just learned the one-note samba, and that was it. That gave her all the syllables that she needed to know. So without those two, you kind of are lost, because if you just do syllables without concept, you get this. And I've heard stuff like that, and it's pretty painful. And if you just have concept, like if you just have the ideas, which probably would be better, but without syllables, you can't articulate. So you have this. So you have people like Mel Torme, Lambert, Hendricks, and Ross, Darman Meter, great player. A lot of saxophone. A lot of jazz players can scat already, because what they're doing is they're just singing what they've heard. So the idea of listening is being done while you're practicing. I heard a video of Wynton Marsalis scatting. Sounds great. There have been players that just randomly stand up and start to scat, and they scat great stuff because they're scatting the stuff they're working on, so they're hearing it. And the syllable thing is just something that you'll get when you copy a vocalist who scats, Carmen McRae. And like I said, I'll list them underneath the little tag. But that's it. That's really it. You can get involved in what syllables are the best, or what gives you the best compression and all that. You could turn it into sort of an intellectual exercise if you want, but that's, you don't want to do that. You want to hear the sound of it, because the thing about scat singing is when it gets bad, it really gets bad, and it kind of jumps out at you. So, for example, if I did four bars of maybe scatting with a concept, 4 bars where I'm thinking about an actual line, some ideas, and maybe I'm thinking about a player like Clifford Brown or Clark Terry. I'm thinking about a player, and I'm using syllables that I've learned. It'll sound like it makes some sense. And then if I do 4 measures where I don't consider this, it can sound really bad really quick. And sometimes people with nice voices want to use their voice, and they just start making sounds. And you got to be careful, because in scat singing, like I said, it's the way I teach it, or the way I approach it, it's an instrumental approach done with your voice. There's nothing voice-like in it other than you do it with your voice. But the approach is the history of this music, which is the same way that anybody would learn. If I had a saxophone player, I was teaching him, I would give him somebody to Dexter Gordon, Coltrane, George Garzone, Berganzi. I would give the students somebody to listen to so they would hear what their instrument sounds like. It's the same thing. This is the same way that jazz players learn. This isn't unique to scat. But here you go. Here's 4 measures of this is always tough. This is 4 measures of concept and syllables, and then 4 measures of just nothing. You'll hear it. It'll be legend. But the four measures of concept, or 4 measures of no concept, you'll hear it a lot sometimes. All right. So here you go. Babu babu babi dee do, babu dee dee babu doo day, waka waka wee no wa, wiki no wee wabi baba, ba 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 da, ba ba boo babi boo da dee da, babu babi babi babu ba doo day, wa wa waka wee no wa. Weenowa. Somebody actually said Weenowa. Weenowa, badalibo. Babalubidi, badalubidi, dadalubidi, 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 badalubidi, babi, badali, bambi, bambi, bam. Wabawi, wawi, wabawa, weewa. Waka wana wana, hana wana, woo woo. A hing on the scalpel, the hing on, ling on the babaduli, badaludi, diddly, bum, jibble, bum, bum, jidom. Diddly, oo, yo, yo, yo. Wow, boom, and it goes on and on. But I've actually heard people just make sound effects, and it's terrible. Don't do that. So remember, get a trumpet player for ideas, get a scat singer for syllables, and you'll be on your way.